So how exactly do you build a midfield that breaks literally every record in German football history? It's a question that has obsessed tacticians for decades. Today, we are looking at one of the most utterly dominant teams ever assembled on a football pitch. A team that didn't just win games, but absolutely suffocated their opposition. But to really understand their dominance, we have to understand the invisible geometry of the center of the pitch.
Well, to answer that, we've got to look at a core philosophy straight from Pep Guardiola's tactical playbook. He said, teams who don't lose possession often are the most balanced ones. And honestly, that perfectly captures the whole theme of our explainer today. We're exploring the relentless pursuit of ultimate midfield balance. Because it's not just about having the best players, right? It's about how those players interact, how they cover space, and how they completely dictate the rhythm of the game.
And the results of achieving that perfect balance? Absolutely staggering. 91. That is the record-setting number of points Bayern Munich racked up in their historic 2012-13 treble-winning season. I mean, they were mathematically crowned champions in just 28 match days. It was unreal.
But honestly, even more insane than that points total is this number, 25. That was the gap between first-place Bayern Munich and second-place Borussia Dortmund. A 25-point gap at the very top of the table. That wasn't just a victory, it was a total, comprehensive, tactical eclipsing of the rest of the league.
Welcome to the Explainer, Schweinsteiger and the Anatomy of Midfield Balance. Today, we're going to break down this absolute masterclass in tactics through the lens of one crucial player who acted as the human fulcrum of it all. Yup, Bastian Schweinsteiger. We're going to see how his intelligence, his movement, and his sheer grit held together one of the most complex systems in modern football. Okay. Let's dive into this tactical playbook. We're going to hit 5 key areas today. First, the ultimate midfield general. Second, building the zonal shield. Third, the double pivot partnership. Fourth, mastering the counterpress. And finally, Pep's positional revolution.
Starting off with Section 1, the ultimate midfield general. To really grasp Bayern's supremacy under Jupp Heynckes, you have to look straight at their engine room. Schweinsteiger was the absolute heart of Heynckes' preferred 4-2-3-1 formation. He was naturally organized, just constantly bridging that gap between a really rugged defense and a highly fluid attack. But his role wasn't just physical, it was deeply psychological and tactical. During those crazy, frenetic matches, like that Champions League semi-final against Barcelona, he was the guy who took total command when the tempo finally dropped in the second half. He basically managed the game's rhythm all by himself, dictating both pace and positioning for the entire squad.
And actually, his impact off the ball was just as vital as his impact on it. Think about this. When Bayern took a massive €40 million leap of faith to sign Javi Martínez, the guy arrived not speaking a single word of German. So Schweinsteiger literally translated Heynckes' instructions right there on the pitch. As Martínez himself noted, Schweinsteiger helped him an immense amount with his positioning in the midfield. He was essentially this on-pitch tactical translator, making sure the team's balance stayed rock solid even as brand new parts were being integrated.
All right, moving on to Section 2, building the zonal shield.
See, Heynckes didn't just want guys running around winning tackles, right? He wanted them to control the invisible spaces on the pitch. The entire foundation of this defense was this concept called zonal shielding. It's basically about using your positioning to create what we call cover shadows, essentially placing your body right between the ball carrier and their passing options. You cut off the lanes, and you maximize the chances of winning the ball back. This idea was actually a carryover from Louis van Gaal, who laid down the early possession-based foundations at Bayern. But Heynckes evolved it. He used high IQ players like Schweinsteiger to sit intelligently in these specific zones and basically choke out opposition counterattacks before they could even get started.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, the double pivot partnership.
Now, what's really interesting here is that shielding is great in theory, but you need absolute monsters to execute it. Just look at the sheer volume of defensive work this partnership produced. Javi Martínez was churning out 16 tackles per game, while Schweinsteiger was putting in a massive 19 tackles per game. They completely locked down that central zone. I mean, look back at that Champions League semi against Barcelona, a team literally famous for their midfield dominance. This duo didn't just outpass them, they outfought them with sheer brute physical force. And the result? A 7-0 aggregate thrashing. No big deal, right?
This partnership was literally the ultimate fix for Bayern. The year prior, they were getting exposed way too easily on the counterattack. But by combining Martinez's pure destructive power with Schweinsteiger's tactical brain, they hit total equilibrium. They could get in a dogfight, or they could slow it down and play a super calm, calculated passing game. That dual-threat flexibility is exactly what made them a truly outstanding pairing.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, Mastering the Counterpress. Bayern didn't just sit back and defend deep. They defended completely on the front foot. Taking a page right out of Jurgen Klopp's playbook at Dortmund, Heynckes adapted his own distinct version of gegenpressing. This meant defending aggressively the very second they lost possession, way high up the pitch, rather than, retreating into a safe defensive block. Heynckes essentially instructed his entire team to suffocate the opponent. And this started right up top, with the striker, Mario Mandžukić. He'd make these sharp-angled runs just to force the ball wide, tilting the pitch and immediately shrinking the available space for whoever was on the ball.
So how exactly did Schweinsteiger make this aggressive press work so seamlessly? Well, when fullbacks like Philipp Lahm and David Alaba bombed forward high up the pitch, they obviously left a ton of space behind them. Schweinsteiger would intelligently slide over to fill those vacated spaces. Sometimes the guy would push so far forward during the press that he was basically operating as a situational second striker right alongside Thomas Müller. Because he read the game so perfectly, he allowed Bayern to trap opponents in these tight, localized numerical advantages, all without ever leaving the back door wide open.
And man, the data totally backs this up. If you look at overall defensive competence, which blends pressing success and tackling, this exact structure made Bayern Munich #1 in the league. They actually surpassed Klopp's Borussia Dortmund and Schalke 04. They were an absolute terrifying machine without the ball.
All right, final piece of the puzzle, Section 5, Pep's Positional Revolution.
So right after that historic treble, Pep Guardiola rolls into Munich with a brand new philosophy on how to maintain that precious midfield balance. And wow, the contrast was immediate. While Heynckes built his 4-2-3-1 specifically to absorb pressure and hit fast transitions, Guardiola shifted to a 4-1-4-1. He actually ditched the double pivot altogether in favor of a single holding midfielder. Under Pep, the team's identity wasn't derived from defending anymore, it came entirely from positional superiority. Think super patient passing, rapid ball circulation, and literally using fullbacks as extra midfielders just to completely dominate the center of the pitch.
And this concept of the split and pass brilliantly illustrates that shift. Players are purposefully positioned to create 2v1 and 3v2 numerical advantages right around the ball. It's wild, but defenders were actually instructed to run with the ball, to actively provoke the opponent. Not to dribble past them, mind you, but to draw them in, split them with a pinpoint pass, and find the free man lurking between the lines. It's just a completely different, highly cerebral way of controlling space. It actually drilled this into the squad. Guardiola leaned on one ultimate tool, the rondo. As the sources point out, it was quite literally his Bible, the total foundation of his soccer conception. These ultra-high-speed, one-touch passing exercises forced players to think incredibly fast and seamlessly keep their shape balanced, all while constantly probing for opposition weaknesses.
But, even master plans hit roadblocks. Schweinsteiger ended up needing ankle surgeries, and Javi Martínez picked up some bad early injuries. But honestly, this is exactly where Guardiola proved his tactical genius. He was forced to adapt on the fly, and famously moved right back Philipp Lahm centrally to play as the pivot. Because Pep's system relied heavily on collective positional discipline rather than just the physical dominance of a single-fit double pivot, Bayern still played this beautiful, utterly dominating football even when their traditional midfield generals were stuck on the sidelines.
So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? It's that true midfield balance requires guys who aren't just physically dominant, but endlessly tactically fluid. From Heynckes' zonal shield and intense counterpressing, right through to Guardiola's intricate positional play and rondos, the one constant thread of Bayern's historic success was their unbelievable adaptability in the center of the park. Players like Schweinsteiger could tackle, press, shift, and pass, all with exactly the same level of brilliance.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on. Considering how Guardiola eventually moved away from that rock-solid Schweinsteiger-Martínez pairing to a much more fluid single-pivot system with inverted fullbacks, has modern tactical football actually evolved past the need for a traditional double pivot entirely? I'll let you ponder that one as you watch the games this weekend. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.